What is good, Mexit Planners? Thank you for joining me again for another episode of the Yucatan News Weekly Update. Now, if you're new to the channel, know that this is the place for you to get all of your questions answered about moving to Mexico, especially if you're moving to Merida, Mexico. We have a lot of stories to cover today, so let's get right into it. Let's go. All right, starting with some updates. Last week we were talking about clean energy and how the Yucatan doesn't have enough energy or doesn't produce enough energy right now to sustain itself, right? And so they're looking at alternative methods to, fossil fuel energy, which is what CFE, the electric company in Mexico or in the Yucatan, uses right now. So just this week, there was legislation passed at a national level by AMLO, the president, to Congress to kind of reform the electric utilities and the way that they're currently run today. There was a poll done across all media channels and social media here in the Yucatan asking if the people here believe that the electric reform bill that was floated by at the national level would be a positive thing for the Yucatan and help us get over our problems with electric energy production, because this bill wants to basically put CFE totally in charge, run by the state, and eliminate the clean energy, the wind options, the solar options, things of that nature. And so the poll had a resounding response. 23.1% of the people said yes, they thought that this bill would impact us positively here in the Yucatan. And while 76.9% of the people said absolutely not, that this electric reform bill will not help us because we need to start harnessing clean energy alternatives. So stay tuned, because I suspect there's going to be more stories about energy, particularly since at a national level things are trying to change in terms of how CFE is run. I do know that the Yucatan, with the way things are growing, are going to just continue to have problems around electricity and the ability to produce it if they don't start using things like solar, wind, and other clean energy alternatives very soon. So this is a city of about 1.2 million people right now. Imagine when we get some of the new projects like the train, new airport, and some of the other projects that they're expecting to add, how fast the city is going to grow. So electric consumption is going to be very important. In fact, just this week, I started my research for doing solar panels in my house because I want to make sure that I have some option to offset some of the costs. Right now, electricity is about 4 times more expensive here in the Yucatan than what I was paying per kilowatt back in Georgia. So stay tuned. I'm sure I'll be talking more about electricity. All right, this was another positive week for conventions here in the Yucatan. If you remember back in, I believe it was the previous Yucatan News Weekly update, I talked about the Home Expo coming to the city. Well, not only have we had the Smart City Expo here, that's already taken place, but just last week, this past weekend, we also had the Home Expo where they had 5,000 homes they were showcasing. I think it was 89 different vendors or exhibitors came out and showed what they could do, from services to building houses to everything you needed for your house. That event happens twice a year. It didn't happen last year. Of course, it hasn't happened since pre-pandemic or before the pandemic. So this was the first time that the home show was back in person. It had both a in-person and a virtual component to it. So that is over, but we've now had 2 expos in person here in Merida in just this month of October. So that's pretty exciting to kind of get the convention business and other things going back again. Also, speaking of updates, we are now in semaphore yellow. Yay! This is only the second time since the pandemic has began that we've actually been in semaphore yellow, which is the yellow stoplight. And this is important because with that, along with the other restrictions that were already eased, such as no curfew. So hotels can now be at 100% occupancy, which is important for the tourist business as well as the conventions. And then event centers and social gatherings can be at 60% capacity. So we're one step away from green. And just to give you some perspective, 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, when I did the previous Yucatan News Weekly update, the number of daily COVID cases was around 270, 278 with like 14 or 15 deaths. That's what I was seeing almost every day in the paper. Well, this week, as I was reading the paper, that number's down almost below 170. So the deaths are still, pretty high, 14, 15, but the number of COVID cases, new daily COVID cases, is now down almost 100 cases, about 178 in that range. So we're moving in a positive direction. Even with all of these things opening, we're not getting more COVID cases as they're reporting this thing daily. So that's very, very important. And that's solid news that we're happy to hear. All right, moving right along. Schools have been back now for over a month, which we are, if you looked at our last video when my wife and I talked about some of the things that have changed for us in this last 2 years, is the fact that they're now going back to school in person. So schools are now back in person. We've been that way for almost a little over a month. And here's some stats in terms of the number of students in the state of the Yucatan that have decided to go back in person. 66% of the students decided to go back in person. That represents over 238,000 students. 122,000 are doing online classes, so they're not back in school. And that's 34% of the students that are, the total students here in the state of the Yucatan. That represents 34% of those students. Things are working well. There have been some schools that have had to, stop classes and shut down and go to a hybrid model. But for the most part, because of the vaccination rollout, and not, obviously kids aren't vaccinated. And that brings me to another point. Just this week, they received the vaccine for kids ages 12 through 17 that have comorbidities. So they're starting to roll out even to the younger age group, and they're looking at a way to roll out to kids from 6 to 11. All right, speaking about things that are opening here in Merida, basically the Grand Mayan Museum or Mayan World Museum is opening a new exhibition of traditional Mayan medicine. And this is important because there's not a lot of people that practice this. For those that don't know, who are watching this video from the States thinking about moving to Merida, there's very much the Maya are still here. Maya people are still here and very much a part of the Yucatan society. And so it's not just something you study, they actually still speak Maya, the language. And in fact, many of the streets, many of the newspapers, I'm gonna put a picture of talking about breast cancer where it was actually in both Spanish one day, and then the next day they actually had that same advertisement or same announcement infographic entirely in Maya. So you can learn Maya as a real live language here in the Yucatan. But there's a museum that is massive. It is an incredible architectural structure that is here on the north side of town, and its entire purpose is to tell people and to show you about all of the things of the Maya civilization. And so here being the cradle of that civilization, where we have, almost every day they're discovering new artifacts as they excavate for this Mayan train that's gonna be from, around the Yucatan Peninsula. They're finding new artifacts, they're finding new things. And so that's actually delaying the process because they have to stop and really take care of those artifacts they're finding, because this is, part of their history, and it's still, the culture and everything is still here. This month in October is a big month for the Maya traditions. Hanal Pesan, which is the feeding of the spirits or the feeding of the souls, is a big part of the Dia de los Muertos celebrations. Actually, they're two separate things. There's Hanal Pesan, which is celebrated here in the Yucatan, and then Dia de los Muertos is really a overall Mexican thing, probably more Mexico City, but they also celebrate it here. So if you haven't seen the movie Coco on Disney, go check it out. But this month, I'm doing a couple of videos on this culture, trying to understand it more. It was the most amazing thing that I've experienced since I've been here in 2019, where they had that entire celebration. I didn't fully understand it, but I can tell you I had a better understanding of the way things work and a much greater appreciation for the way that they, honor their ancestors and the loved ones that have passed on. So there's gonna be more on that, stay tuned. But the Mayan Museum has a exhibition on traditional medicine, and it'll start at the end of October and go on through the end of the year. So get by, if you're in Merida, go and check out the traditional practices around, or the practice of traditional medicine at the Mayan Museum. There's some new measures that are going in place in Progreso. One is you can drink on the beach, right? You can have bottles of alcohol and what have you. You can buy them at the OXXO. You can get drinks delivered to you if you rent a table or palapa, which is now, those tables and palapas are now 20 meters away from the beach, all in a line. You can put your chairs and tables and stuff in front of that, and you can drink on the beach. You cannot, however, drink on the Malecon. So while you're walking on the street, you can't have a beer in your hand, you can't drink. That is against the law. So be aware if you go to Progreso that they're now enforcing that, and you cannot be drinking on the street or what have you. Also, if you are drinking, if you take a beach day and you go to Progreso and you're drinking, do not drink and drive. This place has zero tolerance. I'm talking zero tolerance. And I believe there's a mandatory jail time if you're caught with DUI. And how do they catch you? They make every single person that's leaving Progreso blow in a breathalyzer. So it's not optional. You don't get to call your lawyer, or you don't get to refuse it. You get the blow in that breathalyzer as you're leaving Progreso. Welcome to Mexico. So that is something that I've experienced multiple times leaving Progreso. Even when we were with our church group, everybody, the driver's blowing, right? And that is just something that happens leaving Progreso. So be aware that if you're drinking in Progreso, look, temper that with water, temper that with whatever, but make sure you're not over the legal limit, which you need to look it up, and don't take legal advice from me, but just know that there's zero tolerance here. Even on a regular weekday, like on a Wednesday, on the main streets across from the cervecerias, you'll see DUI checkpoints. They will shut down both sides of the street, funnel all the traffic through, and have people blowing. So be aware that Merida has zero tolerance to DUI. They don't play. And the police aren't the type that you can slip a little something. That ain't happening here in the Yucatan. These folks have great pride in what they do. They don't look the other way. All right, so further news about Progreso. This week has been really about Progreso and some of the things that's happening there, because it's gonna affect the state, maybe even the region. Just to give you some background, Progreso is roughly 25 minutes from Merida, north of Merida on the Gulf Coast. Right now we have, I believe it's now the second largest pier, or even maybe the largest pier. It's one of the largest piers in the world that goes all the way out. It's several miles. I think it's like 10 kilometers or something crazy to the cruise ships, right? Cruise ships dock there. But one of the projects that they have is deepening of that port so that they can get larger container ships in. As a part to support those containers and all of the things that they want to be able to get in here in Merida, they've just announced this week that they're going to create a road that goes from the port or the pier all the way to the expressway or the carretera, where Merida Progreso Carretera. That is like the expressway or the freeway that takes you directly to Merida to Progreso. It's actually, I believe it's 3 lanes on either side. So 3 lanes one direction, 3 lanes coming the other direction. So 6-lane highway that gets you 25 minutes from the north of Merida directly to the beach. So they're building a road that goes from the end of the pier directly to that expressway so that they can bypass all of the city traffic of Progreso. Right now, Calle 82, I believe, is the route that they use. And it's in question, right? They announced this and they said, yes, we're gonna do it. It's gonna take 2 years. They didn't really say how much it's gonna cost. There's a lot of details that they left out. How's this gonna impact the neighbors? What's gonna happen in Calle 82? So this is an evolving story, much like the stadium, right? Where they announce something and then the details are to follow. I expect to be talking about this for the next couple of weeks, because this was a pretty hot issue, and it actually played out over 4 or 5 days in the paper this week. So there's gonna be a road that I believe is gonna be over the existing road that's gonna take you directly from the pier to the expressway, so that those cargo, those trucks and things can leave. Right now, they said there's an estimated 3,000 cars, buses, motorcycles that transverse that route right now, daily. And so there's about 500 of those are trucks, semi-trucks with containers on them. And so they're gonna try to separate that traffic and get those trucks onto this new road, which should be complete in 2 years. So to give you some idea why that pier is so long, where the water meets the beach, right? All the way out for miles and miles and miles is 3 feet. So you can walk waist deep all the way out into the Gulf and be okay. In fact, I was talking to some guys this weekend who went fishing on a boat, and he goes, yep, we went out, you know, the water was 3 feet. One of the guys asked for a life jacket, and the boat captain told him, you know what, you really don't need it, but if you want one, I can get you one. But if you fall over, just stand up. So that's why that port or that pier is so long, is because they had to go way out and then, you know, make it deeper in order for those cruise ships to get in. But you know, they want to make it deeper so that bigger cargo ships can come as well. All right, switching gears to talk about some of the development here in Merida. Man, oh man, they're saying that so let me set the stage. So there's a major underpass that goes from North Merida down to Central. This underpass has been pretty much underwater for a long time. Last year in October 2020, we got a couple of major storms that flooded, you know, Merida pretty bad, and this underpass took the brunt of that because it is below ground, right? It goes under this glorieta called La Paz, or the glorieta is the roundabout, the Peace roundabout, where the big Burger King is and all those stuff. It was to the point where Burger King actually did a commercial. They shot a commercial, you know, showing all the water under here, and they basically hinted at that's a cenote for the city of Merida. So they're expecting to open this underpass that's been closed. They've now got some pumps and some other stuff in it, but they're expecting that project to be complete and for it to open, yes, for traffic. As things open up, let's open this underpass. They're expecting it to open at the end of this month. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for that, and let's hope that that happens. Okay, the next story I'll talk about is getting to Merida, right? So there are some new options to get to Merida from Canada. WestJet is gonna have 3 flights daily from Toronto to Merida, starting Tuesday, November 30th to December 15th. If you're Canadian and you snowbird, that's your opportunity to fly directly from Toronto into Merida. Boom, there you go. So I think that's, you know, these routes are just now reopening for my Canadian brethren. On another note, the US is now opening back up for non-essential travel. So tourism, there's a couple things you need to know. That starts on November 8th. Also on November 8th, if you're not vaccinated. So this is open, they're opening, the USA is opening travel from Mexico to the United States starting November 8th for fully vaccinated people. There's a video I did, it's a 1-minute video, go and check it out. It gives you all the details. So now is your turn, let's talk about these stories. Leave me comments below and let me know what you think about the stories in this week's Yucatan News Weekly update. Until next time, MexitPlans Monty, bam, I'm out.